Hello and welcome to Unity of Fredericksburg. My name is Andrea and I am pleased to welcome all of you to the Unity of Fredericksburg weekly online gathering. At Unity of Fredericksburg, we are advancing the movement of spiritual awakening and transformation through unity, a positive path for spiritual living. We thank those of you watching on YouTube live or later and invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you are able to attend live, we encourage you to join us in the Zoom community room for the full Sunday morning experience, including music, prayer, and connection. Our weekly newsletter includes the Sunday service link, and you can subscribe to receive that on our website at uofva.org. For everyone local to Central Virginia, Unity of Fredericksburg offers a variety of fun and enriching in-person gatherings every month. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter again at uofva.org for all the details. Our message and meditation today comes from Reverend Lily Boyles, who grew up in Unity, believing wholeheartedly in humanity's sacred worth and our messiness. This dichotomy of each of us being fully human and fully divine inspired her to pursue a BA in Religious Studies and Sociology from the University of New Mexico. Ordained from Unity Worldwide Spiritual Institute in 2022, she continues to pursue ministry focused on deep care of individuals, family systems, and communities, knowing that spirit moves inside and outside the walls of a traditional church building. This led her to pursuing clinical pastoral education at the University of Kansas Health System in Kansas City, Kansas, where she continues to live, into her call as a board certified chaplain. Being a chaplain means holding space for the hard and the holy to be seen, heard, and honored. And now, here is Reverend Lily Boyles.
Good morning. Thank you for being here, either live or later. We're just glad you're here. And I'm glad to be back with this wonderful community this morning. We are talking about understanding as one of the 12 powers that this community is going through and growing up in unity. The 12 powers are kind of my bread and butter. And I don't know if I really have thought about understanding. I think I would operate growing up and in some of my more spiritually immature moments as, oh, I understand that. I get that. But the actual work of spiritual understanding is far greater. And so that's what we're going to dive into today. And so I just want to acknowledge that wherever we are in our spiritual path, in our moment of being, wherever we are, whenever we are, that all of it is okay to be here. Part of, I think, what is the beauty of unity, the part of doing work in community together, is that we are not expected to be our best, most shiny, most spiritually evolved version at every moment, that we are growing and changing. And so I just wanted to hold space and set that as the tone. That's something I want to hold for myself, in addition for you. When we think about the power of understanding, I like to expand what we might think of understanding. Like I had talked about this idea of intellectual understanding, which is a piece of this, but also the spiritual understanding. And one of the books that I love for 12 Powers work in definition, in being able to kind of break through what I learned in my Unity church growing up, is the book Power Up. It's by Paul Hasselbeck and Cher Holton, both Unity ministers who have done a lot of work metaphysically. And so they offer us this definition because I love working with the definition, so we're all talking the same language. They talk about the power of understanding as our ability to know, perceive, and comprehend, in essence, to spiritually see in living the truth that we know. They talk about intellectual understanding, which is based in the relative realm, that is gained through experiences and based in intellect. So a lot of that is in the frontal lobe, that is our mind, that is our thoughts that combine reasoning with intellectual understanding. And we're able to make valid and practical conclusions. I love a practical and valid conclusion. The work that we're going to be talking about today, when it talks about the power of understanding, the 12 power of understanding, is coming from our spiritual understanding. which Paul Hasselbeck and Cher Holton define as based in oneness, pulling into the depths of truth. In their definition, spiritual understanding is gained by investing time in this silence. It's a type of knowledge that transcends our intellectual understanding. It comes up and outside of the reasoning process, and it comes as an internal knowing. Oftentimes, I like to think about listening to that still small voice. The way that we understand happens at many levels. And one of the pieces that I want to bring into this conversation about understanding today is the importance of both the intellectual understanding in our mind and the spiritual understanding that happens in our heart. Sometimes in Unity and Other Paths, we talk about wanting to be more heart-centered and move from our mind into our heart. But the work that I hope to bring forward is the integration, knowing that there is an importance that our head meets with our heart, that we cannot do this work without both actively involved. Sometimes when we just stick in our mind, we lose the way of our heart. But if we only stick in our heart, we lose the way of our mind. So this union of both, acknowledging that as part of understanding, the intellectual understanding and the spiritual understanding come from both the head and the heart, actively working together. The other piece that I appreciate from this definition is that understanding takes time. It takes time in the quiet. It takes time in reflection. I think for me, who loves moving to the next thing, would categorize myself as a busybody, the act of understanding taking time feels a little frustrating to me because I want to know it. I want to have it. Sometimes spiritual understanding is the process of being in tune and quieting the mind, which I think might be my entire life's work, is just working to quiet the mind, the busyness, the human piece of doing versus the heart calling me into the human pieces of being. The other book that I have been underpinning and was telling Chris this morning, I have loved diving back into is Divine Audacity by Linda Martella Whitsett. She offers us a piece about understanding that I'll pull from today. Preceding understanding is the desire to understand, she says. Desire may be conscious or not, direct or not. Curiosity is desire. Worry is desire. Confusion can be desire. Doubt even is desire. Desire summons understanding. That we want to be in understanding, to know more, to be more. Charles Fillmore wrote from the 12 Powers of Man, no one ever attained spiritual consciousness without striving for it. And so that's one of those pieces that I appreciate bringing forward is we have a choice in this. That the work of doing true spiritual understanding, enhancing the muscle that is our spiritual understanding, living from the point that is our divine spiritual understanding as one of our 12 powers, takes us to say yes, to engage in this work. And at times there is this impulse in me to always say yes. But the other piece that I want to acknowledge is we get the choice to say yes, to dive deeper, to go into a space of saying, I have learned this much and can I learn more? And sometimes it's not the right time for us to go into deeper and more. Sometimes it's just ours to percolate with what we know and hold that sacred and true. If we are constantly working on the way of becoming better, more spiritually grounded, sometimes we miss the work that we've already done to get us where we are now. And so I want to just honor and acknowledge the work that you've already done in your spiritual path of understanding that brings you here today. In the definition of the power of understanding, the ability to know, perceive, and comprehend, I want to break that down a little bit. It's one of the ways that Linda Martella Whitsett offers some varied understanding of what this power means. And so she talks about comprehension. And so I want to read this passage from her book to you. Comprehension is our ability to discover connections between thoughts and feelings, between the body's message and our habits of thought, between accumulated beliefs and unadulterated truth. Though comprehension, we may make sense of seemingly incompatible or unrelated ideas. That's the work we do. We learn about aspects of our own divine identity when listening to our life. That very clearly speaks to that union between the head and the heart for me, of being able to understand what is ours in habit and what is ours in truth. That both are acknowledged. We're not leaving habits behind. But I think part of that also brings forward, if we operate from our same level of understanding, we have to acknowledge that that's where we are. And if we want to go deeper, it's part of our honesty and responsibility with ourselves to acknowledge our patterns that left unexamined may be blocking us from better understanding ourselves and others. In my life as a chaplain in a hospital, this comes through very clearly when there are family members who might not be understanding the wishes of their loved one when it comes to their medical care or their end of life wishes. Some of it for me, as an unbiased third party walking into a hospital room, is to be the observer of a family and their patterns. Most times in high stress situations, and a lot of times in emotional high stress situations like grief and acceptance, we are operating from patterns that may be unexamined and fall back into that. A lot of times, my work is to just say, I want to understand. Can you help me understand what you mean by that? Can you help me understand what that looks like for you? And being in the place of the observer, the place of the learner, and genuinely sitting in the desire to understand opens that up. That also tells me that in those spaces of high intensity, that may not be the time that we're going to be looking or examining our patterns of behavior. A lot of times, in the way of deepening our spiritual work with understanding, that should be happening on a daily basis, a basis that is not as emotionally charged, so that we can be ready for when we might need to comprehend, for when we might need to be in a space of understanding in a more pressurized emotional situation. Linda Martello Whitsett goes into realization as the next aspect of understanding. And she defines it as either the flash of understanding or a gradual dawning of awareness. She says realization comes as a result of growing comprehension. Where comprehension can be effortful, realization is effortless. It's those ahas, it's those, it came to me, it's those, I never looked at it this way, but of course this makes sense. Realization is that deep knowing that may come from that place that is within us. It may not come from the logical mind, often it doesn't, but it comes from a place of truth. One of the pieces that I appreciate is the work of seeing signs in the world, that sometimes when I am mentally chewing on something that is in process for me, I will look at my receipt at a grocery store, and for whatever reason, the coupon at the bottom has a set of words that reminds me of the truth of who I am. Or when I am at the gas pump and it lines out as a perfect $25 to fill up my gas tank. Whatever I'm looking for in a sign for confirmation, realization is that effortless knowing of truth that comes from many spaces. In the way of comprehension being a working towards, growing in daily practice, realization is coupled as the effortless work of truth to be known. And then Linda Martello Whitsett talks about insight as the third kind of component that makes up spiritual understanding. In her book, she shares, insight is our capacity to employ realization in particular circumstances, applying understanding. You can cultivate insight, for example, into your conflict with your boss or your child's sudden withdrawal. The more you have to comprehend the spiritual truths, the more likely your insights will be accurate and useful. Insight is not cold circulation, but spiritual intelligence arising in both the head and the heart. In the way of all things being connected from my worldview, we cannot get to understanding without one of these components. Being able to say that insight is part of this, she also offers this. Insight, in my sense of understanding, is that my neighbor and I are cut from the same cloth, that we are one. Insight is my awareness of how to respond rather than react, how to behold the inherent goodness in others as well as myself, and then to behave from that light of truth. Insight is not psychoanalyzing another person. Insight is the present awareness of others and my own divine humanity and divine identity. So, in the way of being able to sit and cultivate our comprehension in the world, by acknowledging our realization that comes to us so easily from a place of truth, to join that in the knowing of insight for us and for others, that at the root of all that is true is the root that we are all good. That second unity principle that I hold on to so fiercely, that we are made in the image and likeness of God, and therefore we are inherently good. Understanding is one of the most tangible things that I can offer the world that can actively make it better. In the way of Unity's tagline for many, many years being practical Christianity, practical spiritual path. This feels like an incredibly practical thing that I can do versus sitting in my emotions of powerlessness when I look at the world, but instead utilize my power in understanding to make this world a world that works for all. And that is a space that I think is worthy of my time. I hope worthy of your time, worthy of our time, because I think the world that I am viewing could use people that are willing to understand themselves and others as part of a deeply rooted spiritual process. Not saying it's easy, not saying that it just comes to you one day, but that we can all grow in our understanding for ourselves first and for others as the extension of us, knowing that we are all one. It may not always seem like our first instinct, but we can grow in that. And that, I think, is the blessing of these powers, our 12 powers within us. It within us is they are always here. It is our responsibility to just pull from them whenever we can, whenever we are ready to do the work. And so, in the way of understanding, growing in moments of silence, of moments of examination, I want to offer us a few moments of meditation. One of the beautiful things, if you are looking for expanding your knowledge or taking a different read of the 12 hours, Linda Martella Whitsett's book gives you practices to cultivate understanding in all of the 12 hours and also a meditation. And so I want to offer pieces of this meditation from her book. So whatever your body needs to get you in a different position for meditation or just to quiet your mind, I invite you to just find your breath in the inflow and the outflow. If it supports you to close your eyes, I invite you to do so. And so as you center your awareness in your body, I invite you to start in your head, right above your brow, at the frontal lobe of your brain, which is the physical space of spiritual understanding. As we inhale and exhale intentionally, we draw breath into the area of the brain responsible for logic, planning, and impulse control. Take a moment to shine the light of understanding throughout the front of your brain, cleansing it, clearing the fog of thinking and any misunderstanding, rooting yourself in spiritual understanding. I am the power of understanding. listening to my life and making meaningful connections between my experiences, thoughts, beliefs, and feelings. I comprehend my eternal nature as I pause in this moment of stillness. I call forward from within the ability of realization, at ease knowing that flashes of awareness may come in the quiet and throughout my day. I tap into the gift that is spiritual insight, seeing beneath the words and actions of others to see their true spiritual nature. I offer that same spiritual understanding to myself. Understanding oneness, I act in ways of deep understanding for myself and for others. By the power of understanding, I learn from my life. By the power of understanding, I learn from the one mind through which I realize eternal truths. And for a moment, I just invite you to tell yourself, I am divine understanding. I am divine understanding. I am divine understanding. And in that truth and with that breath, I invite you to come back to this physical space. If you had closed your eyes, I invite you to slowly open them, continuing to bring forward in your life the power of understanding. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching the weekly broadcast from Unity of Fredericksburg. Visit our website, uofva.org, to learn more about our mission of spiritual awakening and transformation, and support our ministry with your financial donation. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.